As you can see, I am a Frenchman, and I am living in Paris near the Statue of Liberty. I am 51 years old, and I was born in Bordeaux in France. My father was a professional soldier, and when I was born, he was fighting during the Algerian War. Saint-Étienne is the last place he worked, and he retired when he was in Saint-Étienne. After his retirement, he stayed in Saint-Étienne, so my schooling and student life took place there. When he retired in 1965, I was 7 years old. After my bachelor's degree, I studied law in Saint-Étienne, and I received my master's there, and after that, I studied in Lyons for postgraduate comparative law. In 1982, I met an insurance general agent whose name is Philip. He was an entrepreneur, or an chevalier blanc. He was a very positive, dynamic person. He built his own company from the ground up. I met him in 1982, and he had started the company before that in 1976. He was very close to the football team in Saint-Étienne, who had a very good football team in those days, and we had a lot of good players as clients. I was deputy to him. When I was 30, I felt like changing my work, so I looked around and found a job to create a business school in Lyons for a Parisian business school who wanted to start in this part of the country. And I was their representative. Everything had to be done. It had to be built from the ground up. We started from scratch. We had to find the location, build up the faculty, find students, and create new enrollment, organize the school, and so on, to take all the administrative steps before opening. Everything had to be done, and it was very difficult. However, in 1993, there was a crisis for private business schools because they were too expensive, and families did not want to pay that kind of money for education, and they preferred to go to the university. It continued on, but it remained a small school. It was obvious that, with the crisis, the business school was not going to expand. So I felt if I continued with the school, it would be too difficult for me to come back to the insurance business. So I decided to stop, and I changed my job to relocate to Paris. And I started for AXA in a subsidiary whose name was Moinvesson, a captive broker for retail insurance. Moinvesson works with several stores in and around Paris. I was the company secretary for Moinvesson. It was very exciting. At the end of 1993, there had been a lot of changes in AXA. In Moinvesson, there was a new boss, a guy whose name was Patrick. He was the chief executive of AXA Belgium, and he phoned my former boss to propose that I come to Brussels and be in charge of another captive broker who was working on the Belgium market and whose name was Dem Group. Dem Group was the third broker in the Belgium market. It had about 13 or 15 portfolios, so it was the third most powerful broker in the Belgium market. We were about 200 people working for Dem Group, and they had many problems, and that's the reason that Patrick, my former boss, called me, because he wanted to have friends in place, because the situation was very difficult. So I had to help in restructuring the company, and after restructuring, AXA took the decision of selling the company. I could understand the position of AXA, especially for the Belgium market, because it is very difficult to be and to work as a captive broker, because the other workers think that the company is too generous to the subsidiaries. So it's difficult for a company. For the broker, it's very difficult because you are a subsidiary of a big company, but you are also a broker, and he must be in charge of several companies. So it's a difficult situation for both the company and the shareholder. So I think that AXA's decision was comprehensible. I could understand. It wasn't hard for me to enact their decision and to go about selling the different portfolios. AXA asked me to negotiate and to sell the different portfolios individually. In other words, flat by flat. And it's tough because you have 200 people, and the real issue is when someone buys the portfolio to give him the workers in charge of the portfolio. I succeeded in this mission, and at the end of 1995 it was all over, finished. All the portfolios had been sold correctly. After that, I was relocating to AXA Belgium, and it was my first job for the company. Before that, I had always worked for subsidiaries, but never for a large company. The company is more institutional than a broker. When you are a subsidiary, it's as if you worked for a small company. It has the atmosphere of a small company. But you are working for AXA. It's a big company, so the processes, the decisions are more difficult than in a subsidiary. Then I was in charge of Lion's audit, and then after that there was the merger between AXA Belgium and Royal Belge, which was UAP's subsidiary in Belgium, and the staff was going from 1,000 to 5,000. After this merger, I had to work for Eric, who is now the CEO of AXA in Greece. And he came to my boss just after the merger between AXA and Royal Belge, and that's when I began to work for him. In the first part of our collaboration, we had been working with strategy, organization, and all that must be done after a big merger, and distribution problems as well, networking, etc. From 1995 to 2000, I was an expatriate, so my contract was a French contract. I was actually working for AXA Paris. They tried to renew my contract, but it could not be renewed. So I had to get back to Paris, and it was hard to come back as an expatriate. I phoned Eric back, and he proposed that I return to Brussels to work again. So in 2001, I went back to Brussels. And as I wasn't very busy before, my wife and I had started and developed a real estate company in Paris. So that's why it wasn't possible for my wife to relocate to Brussels with me. So I was working during the week, and I would go back to Paris every weekend, back and forth, back and forth. We had worked with Eric on a very interesting problem: commercial restructuring and reorganization, segmentation with the different networks. It was very interesting.